The United States found itself involved in a lengthy, divisive, military conflict overseas. A surfeit of controversial incidents besieged the U.S. military and confounded official Washington as to what to do. Leaders at the National Security Council argued that local fighters were improving their military skills. As a result, the U.S. could cede more power to them. In other words, the war needed to be Americanized. Instead, the Defense Secretary chose another term: Vietnamization. The above scenario obviously isn't about the 4 U.S. soldiers killed earlier this month in Niger. It isn't about President Trump's decision in August to maintain the U.S. mission in Afghanistan and bolster troop levels there. But what the U.S. is doing in Niger and Chad and Mali and Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya and Djibouti and Turkey and Yemen and Jordan and Uganda and Cameroon and South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Central African Republic and Somalia and Kosovo and Cuba and parts of Syria, certainly echoes Defense Secretary Melvin Laird telling President Richard Nixon the U.S. should Vietnamize the battle in Southeast Asia. That would denote a shift. Laird asserted that Vietnamization properly characterized U.S. involvement going forward. After all, the U.S. didn't want an open-ended commitment in Vietnam. Many in Washington wanted to get out as soon as possible. Things certainly didn't work out that way. The U.S. found itself paralyzed in Vietnam for years. As a result, Vietnam syndrome set in among the public and the nation's political leaders. Americans were reluctant to engage overseas. In a speech to the veterans of foreign wars, President Ronald Reagan said that the U.S. lived with Vietnam syndrome for too long. As a result, Reagan said Americans were told that peace would come if we would simply stop interfering and go home. Reagan declared, "We dishonor the memory of the 50,000 young Americans who died in that cause when we give way to feelings of guilt as if we were doing something shameful." Reagan told the VFW that was a lesson for all of us on Vietnam. "If we are forced to fight, we must have the means and the determination to prevail, or we will not have what it takes to secure the peace." 2 months ago, Trump made the case to Afghanize the fight. The president said Afghan troops would bear the heaviest burden in this struggle. He also spoke of the thousands of U.S. troops who fought and died in Afghanistan. Trump suggested the U.S. needs to remain engaged in Afghanistan to secure the cause for which they gave their lives. Vietnam was a seminal period in the American experience. It's natural to draw parallels between Vietnam and other lengthy military engagements. The U.S. has now been in Afghanistan since shortly after 9/11. How long should the U.S. stay? Ironically, military analysts now believe Vietnam isn't the model to which people should look when discussing Afghanistan. They note how long the U.S. has remained on the Korean Peninsula. This is ironic. Consider the fact that the 60-plus-year U.S. presence there hasn't inhibited the possibility of the U.S. facing off with Pyongyang in a nuclear war. Those chances are now as high as ever. In June, the president submitted to Congress a report detailing all of the places the U.S. is involved militarily. Most are listed above, information about deployments and justifications for the operations. Most of these missives from the administration to Congress contain a crucial phrase. The letter states the information the president is sending to Capitol Hill is consistent with the War Powers Resolution, as part of my efforts to keep Congress informed about deployments of the U.S. Armed Forces equipped for combat. Note it states consistent with the resolution. The letter doesn't state in compliance with. No administration of either party has truly acknowledged the resolution since its adoption in 1974. Article I, Section 8 of the Constitution grants Congress the power to declare war. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution names the President Commander-in-Chief. Congress created the resolution as an additional check on the President to curb his war-making authority. This effort backfired as Congress inadvertently ceded more latitude to the President. So short of declaring war somewhere, presidents simply slip Congress a note at regular intervals as to what the U.S. is doing where. Constitutional? Unclear. Adhering to the War Powers Resolution? Not really. Consistent with the resolution? You bet. This brings us to Niger. Think the U.S. is at war in Niger? Then why are there 4 dead Americans there, and what were they doing there? Trump's June letter spells it all out. The president told lawmakers that United States military personnel in the Lake Chad Basin continue to provide a wide variety of support to African partners conducting counterterrorism operations in the region. In Niger, there are about 645 U.